The lights in the studio burn bright, casting long shadows across the polished desk. The host's voice is steady, but there's a glint of anticipation in his eyes as he turns to the screen behind him. Tonight, he announces, we revisit the words of a legend. The click, the unmistakable image of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg fills the screen. Her voice, clear and resolute, echoes through the studio. Fight for the things that you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you. The audience leans in, sensing something more than nostalgia. The host lets the words hang, then pivots sharply to Jasmine Crockett, seated across from him. Congresswoman Crockett, he says, his tone sharpening, Justice Ginsburg set a standard for leadership, measured, unifying, principled. Some say your approach is the opposite, confrontational, divisive, even reckless. How do you justify your style when the legacy of someone like Ginsburg looms so large? A hush falls over the room. The question isn't just a challenge, it's a gauntlet thrown at Crockett's feet. The weight of history pressing down. The host's eyes never leave her face, searching for a flicker of doubt, a sign of hesitation. The audience, both in the studio and watching from home, feels the tension coil tighter. Social media lights up, the moment already being clipped and shared. The debate ignited before a single answer is given. Crockett sits motionless, her expression unreadable. The legacy of Ginsburg, the expectations of a nation, the scrutiny of millions, all converge in this single, breathless moment. The host leans in, voice low and insistent. Do you really believe your way honors her legacy, or are you tearing it down? The silence is electric, the stakes unmistakable. But no one expected what Jasmine Crockett would say next, to understand. The weight of this moment, you have to step back and see the forces colliding beneath the studio lights. Ruth Bader Ginsburg's legacy is more than a memory. It's a living standard. Invoked in classrooms, courtrooms, and dinner tables across America. Her words have become scripture for those who believe in justice. Her image, a symbol of what's possible when courage meets conviction. For years, her legacy has been wielded as both shield and sword, a reminder of how far the nation has come and how far it still has to go. But tonight, that legacy is being used as a test. Jasmine Crockett, the daughter of working-class parents, the first in her family to walk the halls of Congress, now finds herself measured against an icon. She's no stranger to pressure. Her rise has been meteoric, fueled by a refusal to play by the old rules. She's called out hypocrisy, challenged the status quo, and made enemies as quickly as she's made allies. To some, she's a breath of fresh air, a voice for a new generation, unafraid to speak truth to power. To others, she's a disruptor. It's a threat to the comfortable order that Ginsburg herself once had to fight to enter. The stakes are generational, cultural, and deeply personal. For every young woman watching, for every immigrant family who sees their own journey in Crockett's, this isn't just about politics, it's about belonging. It's about whether the doors Ginsburg opened will stay open, and who gets to walk through them next. The host's challenge is more than a question. It's a demand for Crockett to justify her very presence, to prove she's worthy of the legacy she's been handed. Outside the studio, the nation is restless. The old guard clings to tradition, invoking Ginsburg's name as a call for civility and restraint. But the streets tell a different story, one of urgency. A voice is rising, of a hunger for change that can't be quieted by decorum alone. Social media is ablaze, the hashtags multiplying by the second. Hashtag Ginsburg vs. Crockett. Hashtag legacy or change. Millions are watching, not just for Crockett's answer, but for a sign that the future can honor the past without being shackled by it. The pressure is immense. Crockett knows that every word she utters will be dissected, debated, and replayed. She knows that for some, nothing she says will ever be enough. But she also knows who she represents, the dreamers, the fighters, the ones who refuse to wait their turn, the ones who see in her not just a politician, but a possibility. Millions watched, expecting a stumble. What happened next would rewrite the rules of political debate. Decades, Ruth Bader Ginsburg's words have echoed through the corridors of power, shaping the way America thinks about justice, equality, and the role of women in public life. Her legacy is not just a collection of legal victories or dissents. It's a living, breathing standard, invoked by those who seek to measure the worth of every woman who dares to lead. Ginsburg's calm, her intellect, her ability to win over even her fiercest opponents, these have become the gold standard, the yardstick by which all others are judged. But there's a darker side to this reverence. It's in the hands of the powerful. Ginsburg's legacy has become a weapon, a way to police the tone, tactics, and even the ambition of women who follow in her footsteps. The host tonight knows this well. He's built a reputation on holding guests to account. But there's a pattern to his method. He invokes the past to challenge the present. Using the words of icons to box in the voices of the new, he's not alone. Across the media landscape, the Ginsburg standard is wielded with subtle arrogance. When a woman in power raises her voice, she's told to be more like Ruth, measured, patient, unflappable. When she pushes too hard, she's accused of betraying the legacy. The message is clear. There's only one right way to lead, and it's the way that makes the gatekeepers comfortable. This tactic is especially potent when aimed at women of color. At immigrants, at those whose very presence in the halls of power is a challenge to the old order. The host's question to Jasmine Crockett is more than a critique. It's a coded warning. He's not just asking if she honors Ginsburg's legacy. He's demanding that she conform to it, that she shrink herself to fit a mold designed by someone else. But the irony is hard to miss. Ginsburg herself was once the outsider, the disruptor, the woman who refused to wait her turn. She was criticized for her methods, doubted for her ambition, and told to temper her passion. The very standard now used to constrain new voices was forged in the fires of resistance by a woman who broke the rules because the rules were broken. The host presses on, confident in his position. He plays the Ginsburg clip not as a tribute, but as a test. He frames his challenge as a defense of tradition, but beneath the surface, it's about control. It's about reminding Crockett, and everyone like her, that the past still holds the keys to the future. The audience senses the tension. Some nod along, comforted by the familiar cadence of Ginsburg's words. Others bristle, recognizing the trap being set. Social media splits in real time, with some praising the host for defending civility and others calling out the double standard. The debate is no longer just about Crockett's style. It's about who gets to define leadership and whose legacy gets to set the rules. The host's tactic is as old as power itself. Use the icons of progress to slow the march of change. He invokes Ginsburg not to inspire, but to intimidate. He wields her words like a shield, daring Crockett to step out of line, to risk being labeled as too much, too loud, too bold, too different. But tonight, something is shifting. The old playbook is wearing thin. The audience is restless, hungry for a new kind of answer, one that honors the past without being bound by it. The host may believe he holds the upper hand, but the ground beneath him is already starting to move because the truth is, the Ginsburg standard was never meant to be a cage. It was meant to be a call, a challenge to every generation to fight for justice in their own way, with their own voice, on their own terms. But tonight, the Ginsburg standard was about to meet a new kind of answer. Jasmine Crockett's story doesn't begin in the marble halls of Congress or under the glare of national television. Small, a bustling neighborhood where dreams were often measured by the size of a paycheck and the strength of a family's hope. Her mother, a nurse who worked double shifts, and her father, a mechanic who never complained about grease under his nails, taught Jasmine that dignity is not something you inherit, it's something you fight for every single day. As a child, Jasmine watched her parents stretch every dollar, sacrificing their own comfort so she could have a shot at something better. She learned early that the world didn't always play fair. She saw her father passed over for promotions, her mother's exhaustion dismissed by supervisors who never bothered to learn her name. But in that small house, Jasmine was told she could be anything. Her parents' faith in her was unshakable, and it became the foundation for everything she would become. School was Jasmine's first battleground. She was the only black girl in her advanced classes, the one teachers sometimes overlooked, the one classmates underestimated, refused to shrink. When a teacher once told her that girls like you don't usually make it to the top, Jasmine didn't cry. She raised her hand higher, studied harder, and made sure her name was at the top of every honor roll. Learned to turn every slight into fuel, every insult into motivation. By the time she reached college, Jasmine was a force. She marched for justice, organized voter drives, and spoke out against policies that left her community behind. She didn't just want to succeed, she wanted to bring others with her. Law school was another crucible. She worked nights to pay tuition, spent weekends volunteering at legal clinics, and never forgot the faces of the families who came to her for help. She saw the way the system chewed people up, the way justice was too often a privilege, not a right. Jasmine's decision to run for office wasn't born of ambition, it was born of frustration. She was tired of watching politicians make promises they never intended to keep. She was tired of seeing her community's needs ignored, their voices drowned out by lobbyists and insiders. So she ran, not as a polished insider, but as a fighter. Her campaign was scrappy, underfunded, and powered by volunteers who believed in her vision. She knocked on doors, listened to stories, promised to be the voice that wouldn't be silenced. The road to Congress was anything but smooth. Jasmine faced attacks from all sides, whispers about her background, doubts about her experience, outright racism from those who couldn't imagine someone like her in power. She endured threats, sleepless nights, and moments of crushing doubt. But every time she thought about giving up, she remembered her mother's tired smile, her father's quiet pride, and the kids in her old neighborhood who needed to see that someone like them could make it. When Jasmine finally won her seat, it wasn't just a victory for her. It was a victory for everyone who'd ever been told to wait their turn, to lower their voice, to settle for less. She walked into Congress with her head held high, determined to be more than just a symbol. She fought for criminal justice reform, for affordable health care, for the right of every child to dream as big as she once had. She spoke with passion, voted with conviction, and never forgot where she came from. But with every step forward came new challenges. The old guard in Congress didn't know what to make of her. Some tried to box her in, to dismiss her as a troublemaker or a headline chaser. Others tried to co-opt her, to use her story for their own gain. Jasmine refused to play along. She called out hypocrisy, stood up to bullies, and made it clear that she wasn't in Washington to make friends. She was there to make change. Her journey was marked by sacrifice. She missed birthdays, funerals, and quiet moments with family. She endured the loneliness that comes with being the first, the only, the one who stands out. But Jasmine never wavered. She carried the hopes of her community on her shoulders, knowing that every battle she fought was bigger than herself. Now, under the blinding lights of the studio, Jasmine Crockett sits across from a host wielding the legacy of Ruth Bader Ginsburg as a test. She is calm, composed, and unbreakable. Every challenge, every insult, every late night had led her to this very moment. Under these blinding lights, and as the world waits for her answer, Jasmine knows she is ready. She has faced tougher questions, harsher critics, and higher stakes. Tonight, she is not just representing herself, she is carrying the dreams of everyone who has ever been told they don't belong. And she is about to show the world exactly what dignity under fire looks like. The studio lights seem to grow brighter, the air heavier as the host leans forward, remote in hand. He presses play once more, and Ginsburg's voice fills the room. Real change, enduring change, happens one step at a time. The words are clear, deliberate, and unmistakably pointed. The host turns to Jasmine Crockett, his gaze sharp, his tone edged with challenge. "Congresswoman Crockett," he says, "Justice Ginsburg believed in incremental progress in building bridges, not burning them. Yet your critics say your approach is too aggressive, too impatient, too willing to disrupt rather than unite. How do you reconcile your style with the legacy of someone who changed the world by working within the system?" The question lands. Like a gauntlet, social media pulses with anticipation, the moment already trending. Hashtag Ginsburg Flashcracket. Hashtag Legacy on Trial. That your confrontational tactics risk alienating allies and undermining the very causes you claim to champion. Do you really believe that your way is better than the path Ginsburg paved? Crockett's jaw tightens, but she doesn't look away. The host senses an opening and pushes harder. You've called out members of your own party, challenged leadership, and refused to compromise on issues where others might have settled. Isn't that the opposite of what Ginsburg stood for? Are you honoring her legacy or rewriting it too? Suit your own ambitions. The tension is palpable. Crockett's supporters hold their breath, willing her to stand firm. Her critics wait for a misstep, a flash of anger, a stumble that will confirm their doubts. The host's words are relentless, each one designed to corner, to provoke. To force a reaction, he leans in, voice low and insistent. Justice Ginsburg built coalitions. She found common ground. Can you honestly say you're following in her footsteps? Or are you tearing down what she spent a lifetime building? The silence that follows is thick with expectation. Crockett sits motionless, her face unreadable, the weight of the moment pressing down. The host's challenge is clear. Conform or be cast as the villain, fit the mold, or be accused of betraying the legacy. The audience is on edge, the nation watching. The pressure is immense, the scrutiny unrelenting. Crockett is pushed to the brink, the legacy of Ginsburg wielded as both shield and sword. And then, as the world watched, Jasmine Crockett did the unthinkable. Jasmine Crockett sits in the center of the storm, the host's challenge still echoing in the air. The legacy of Ruth Bader Ginsburg has been laid at her feet like a test she was never meant to pass. The audience waits for her to falter, to retreat, to apologize for being too much. But Crockett doesn't flinch. She lets the silence stretch, her calm presence commanding the room in a way that no raised voice ever could. When she finally speaks, her voice is steady, almost gentle. I want to thank you for playing Justice Ginsburg's words, she begins, her eyes never leaving the host. Because I grew up in a home where her name was spoken with reverence. My mother would tell me stories about the doors she opened, the battles she fought, and the dignity she carried into every room. Justice Ginsburg taught us all that real change is possible, but she also taught us that sometimes you have to be willing to break the silence before you can build the bridge. The host tries to interject, but Crockett holds up a hand, her tone unwavering. You say I'm impatient, say I'm disruptive. But let's remember who Ruth Bader Ginsburg really was. She was called too ambitious, too outspoken, too radical. For her time, she was told to wait her turn, to temper her voice, to settle for less. But she didn't. She pushed. She challenged. She refused to accept that justice could only move at the pace of those already comfortable. She leans forward, her words gaining strength. I honor Justice Ginsburg's legacy not by mimicking her every move, but by carrying her spirit into a new era. The world she fought to change is not the world we live in now. The battles are different, the stakes are higher, and the voices demanding justice are louder. If I am bold, it's because the times demand it. If I am impatient, it's because my community cannot afford to wait another generation for promises to be kept. The studio is silent, the tension transformed into something electric. Crockett's words cut through the air, each one landing with the weight of lived experience. You ask if I'm building bridges or burning them. I say I'm clearing the path for those who have never been invited to cross. I say I'm making space for the voices that have been silenced, for the stories that have been ignored. Justice Ginsburg didn't just build bridges, she made sure the doors on the other side were open to everyone. She turns, speaking not just to the host, but to the millions watching at home. To every young woman, every immigrant, every person who's ever been told they're too much or not enough. Don't let anyone use the past to limit your future. Don't let anyone weaponize legacy to keep you in your place. Justice Ginsburg's greatest lesson wasn't about patience, it was about persistence. Persistence. The host, usually unflappable, is visibly rattled. He glances at his notes, searching for a foothold, but Crockett isn't finished. You say I'm rewriting the legacy. I say I'm living it. I say I'm taking the torch that Justice Ginsburg carried and running with it, even if it means running into the fire. Because progress doesn't happen by waiting for permission. It happens when someone is brave enough to demand more. She pauses, letting her words settle over the room. Am not here to make people comfortable. I am here to make them think, to make them act, to make them believe that justice is not a gift handed down from the powerful, but a right that belongs to all of us. If that makes me controversial, so be it. I would rather be remembered for fighting. Too hard than for settling too soon? The audience is transfixed. On social media, the reaction is immediate and explosive. Tweets flood in. Jasmine Crockett just redefined leadership. This is what courage looks like. Ginsburg would be proud. Hashtags trend within minutes. Hashtag Crockett mic drop. Hashtag legacy in action. Hashtag dignity. Unapologetic. Even the host, the architect of the confrontation, is left speechless. Tries to regain control, but his next question falters, his voice betraying a hint of uncertainty. Congresswoman, some will say you're dividing the movement, not uniting it. How do you? Respond to those who fear your approach will cost us more than it gains. Crockett smiles, her confidence unshaken. Change is never comfortable, it's never easy. But every movement that's ever mattered, every fight for justice, every step toward equality, has been led by people who refuse to wait their turn. I am not here to divide. I am here to remind us that unity without justice is just silence, and I will never be silent. The studio audience, silent until now, erupts in applause. Even some of the host's producers exchange glances, recognizing the gravity of what just happened. Crockett's words have shifted the energy in the room, turning a calculated challenge into a moment of clarity and hope. Viewers at home are glued to their screens. Clips of Crockett's answer are already being shared, dissected, and celebrated. Memes pop up, capturing the look on the host's face. Commentators rush to weigh in, some praising Crockett's poise, others scrambling to spin the moment. But the real shock is the host's reaction, a rare, visible crack in his legendary composure. He leans back, momentarily speechless, his usual arsenal of follow-ups rendered useless. For a brief, unforgettable moment, the power dynamic has shifted. Crockett is no longer on the defensive. She owns the room, the narrative, the moment, and as the applause fades and the cameras keep rolling, one thing is clear. This was more than just a viral soundbite. It was a turning point, a reminder that dignity, courage, and truth can still cut through the noise. But as the world celebrated, a new question emerged. How far would the shockwaves of this moment travel? Happen when the dust finally settled? The instant Jasmine Crockett's answer hit the airwaves, the world seemed to shift. Within seconds, the clip was everywhere, shared, retweeted, and replayed by millions. The hashtags #CrockettMicDrop and #LegacyInAction blazed across social media. As people from every corner of the country weighed in, some called it the most powerful political moment of the year. Others called it a challenge to the old guard. But no one could deny its impact. Cable news anchors scrambled to keep up, replaying. The exchange on a loop? A seismic shift in the conversation, one declared. A new voice for a new era, said another. Pundits who had once dismissed Crockett as too brash or too bold now found themselves re-examining their assumptions. The debate was no longer just about policy or personality. It was about who gets to define what justice looks like in America, and whose voices are allowed to shape the future. Celebrities quickly joined the chorus. Actors, musicians, and athletes posted their support, quoting Crockett's words and sharing their own stories of being told to wait their turn. One Grammy-winning artist tweeted, "This is what courage looks like. This is what legacy looks like." A viral TikTok remix of Crockett's answer racked up millions of views in hours, set to a beat that pulsed with pride and defiance. But the moment didn't just belong to the famous. In living rooms, in classrooms, in group chats and community centers, people talked about what they'd seen. Immigrant families saw themselves in Crockett's journey, her refusal to shrink, her insistence on being heard. Young women of color felt a surge of pride, seeing someone who looked like them stand tall under the harshest spotlight. Teachers played the clip for their students, sparking conversations about courage, representation, and the power of speaking. Truth to power. Not everyone was celebrating. Critics on talk radio and partisan blogs tried to spin the moment. accusing Crockett of disrespecting a revered legacy or being too confrontational. Some politicians, feeling the heat, issued carefully worded statements, trying to walk the line between acknowledging Crockett's poise and defending the traditions of the past. But the more they tried to control the narrative, the more it slipped from their grasp. The energy was with the people, and the people were ready for something new. Supporters mobilized. Grassroots organizations launched fundraising drives using Crockett's words as their rallying cry. Activists organized watch parties, turning a single interview into a movement. For many, it wasn't just about Crockett. It was about the possibility of a new kind of leadership, one that didn't apologize for its roots or its passion. The ripple effect was immediate and profound. In the days that followed, other politicians were asked to respond to Crockett's moment. Some tried to emulate her calm, others bristled at the comparison. Editorials appeared in major newspapers, debating whether this was a turning point for political discourse or just another viral flash in the pan. But for those who had watched the interview live, there was no question. Something had shifted. Social media became a battleground of ideas. Memes captured the look on the host's face, while threads of personal stories flooded timelines. People shared their own experiences of being challenged, of standing up for what they believed in, of refusing to be silenced. The conversation grew beyond Crockett and Ginsburg, touching on legacy, progress, and the future of American politics. In the midst of the noise, Crockett herself remained steady. She thanked her supporters, acknowledged her critics, and reminded everyone that the work was far from over. "This moment isn't about me," she tweeted. "It's about all of us who believe in dignity, justice, and the power of our voices. Let's keep pushing." But the true impact of Crockett's words was only just beginning to be felt. As the headlines faded and the social media storm settled, Jasmine Crockett's answer began to resonate far beyond the studio. It was no longer just a viral moment or a trending hashtag. It became a lesson. It's a touchstone for anyone who had ever felt the weight of someone else's expectations. Crockett's calm, her refusal to be boxed in by the past, became a rallying point for a new generation. Hungry for authenticity and courage, people began to see her response not as a rejection of Ruth Bader Ginsburg's legacy. Of it, Crockett honored the trailblazers who came before her. But she also made it clear that progress doesn't mean standing still in reverence. It means moving forward, even when the path is uncertain, even when the world demands you play by rules that were never written for you. In classrooms, teachers replayed the clip and asked their students what it means to honor a legacy. In community centers, activists discussed how to balance respect for the past with the urgency of the present. Crockett's words became a spark for conversations about what real leadership looks like. Leadership that doesn't apologize for being bold, that doesn't shrink to fit someone else's comfort, that refuses to let nostalgia become a cage. 4. Young people, especially those from immigrant families or marginalized backgrounds, Crockett's moment was a beacon. She didn't apologize for her roots or her passion. She didn't shrink to fit someone else's expectations. Instead, she stood in the spotlight and claimed her space, not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever been told to wait their turn. Crockett's answer reminded the nation that dignity is not about silence or compliance. It's about standing tall, even when the world tries to make you small. It's about speaking your truth, even when it's uncomfortable. And it's about forging your own path, even in the shadow of giants. The lesson was clear. True progress is not about erasing the past, but about building on it, about taking the torch and carrying it forward, even if your steps look different. From those who came before, Crockett's response was a declaration that the future belongs to those who are brave enough to claim it, to those who refuse to be defined by someone else's idea of what is possible. As the video drew to a close, the message lingered. The world will always have its gatekeepers, its guardians of tradition, its voices urging patience and restraint. But history is made by those who dare to answer differently, who choose dignity over provocation, truth over nostalgia, courage over comfort. In the end, it wasn't just a viral moment. It was a masterclass in grace under fire. Crockett's example reminded everyone watching that the real test of character comes not when things are easy, but when the pressure is at its highest. She showed that you can face down the toughest questions, the harshest critics, and the brightest lights, and still walk away with your dignity intact. And for everyone who watched Jasmine Crockett that night, the lesson was unforgettable. Stand tall, speak your truth, and never let anyone else decide your worth. So when Judge Ruth Bader Ginsburg's iconic words were replayed against Jasmine Crockett, no one could have predicted the response that would follow. Crockett didn't just answer a question. She redefined what it means to honor a legacy while forging your own path. Her calm, her clarity, and her courage became a beacon for anyone who's ever been told to wait their turn or to quiet their voice. This moment wasn't just about a viral clip or a trending hashtag. It was about the power of standing tall in the face of pressure, about choosing dignity over provocation, and about speaking truth even when the world demands silence. Crockett's answer reminded us all that the future belongs to those who are willing to claim it, to those who refuse to be defined by someone else's comfort or nostalgia. If this story moved you, if you believe in the power of calm courage and unapologetic truth, now is the time to act. Subscribe to this channel for more stories that celebrate real leadership and real change. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that their voice matters. And join the conversation, because every time we lift each other up, we make our democracy stronger. This isn't just about one interview or one politician. It's about all of us and the future we're building together. Because every time someone stands up with calm and courage, history is made and you can be part of it.